The first time Jamal heard Mr. Whitmore's laugh, he thought it was the sound of money sneering at the poor. It was sharp, cruel, the kind of laugh that left an aftertaste of humiliation in the air. Jamal had been stacking cans of beans on aisle 7 when the Millionaire CEO barged into the store, barking at his assistant and talking loudly about how lazy people only had themselves to blame for being stuck in jobs like this. He did not notice Jamal's hands shaking as he tried to keep the pyramid of cans from collapsing. He did not care. Jamal, 22, a cashier in a small grocery store on the east side of the city, had learned long ago how to swallow insults. Being black meant he heard them almost daily, whether dressed in sharp church clothes or in his store uniform. Being gay meant he carried a secret heavier than the bags of potatoes he loaded into customers' carts. The world was cruel enough to people like him. Exposing his truth felt like asking for a punishment he wasn't sure he could survive. But fate has a way of pushing even the quietest people into the center of storms. The day it all began, Jamal's mother was at the counter, waiting for her paycheck to clear so she could buy groceries. His father, a man whose pride always outweighed his income, stood beside her, jaw clenched, refusing to accept help from anyone. Jamal's younger sister, Brianna, just 16, clutched her phone like a lifeline, pretending to scroll while secretly listening to every adult word. The Whitmore Corporation had just announced a new development that would demolish half of their neighborhood. Families would be displaced, history erased, all because the CEO wanted luxury apartments with a rooftop pool. That CEO was the same man whose laughter cut through Jamal's chest like glass. "Do you know who that is?" whispered a coworker, nodding toward the tall figure in the Armani suit near the bakery section. "That's Alexander Whitmore himself, the one buying up the block." Jamal knew. Everyone in the neighborhood knew. Whitmore was a name spoken with bitterness, often followed by phrases like, "He doesn't care about us," or, "He thinks we're disposable." Jamal tried to avoid eye contact, but it was too late. Mr. Whitmore's gaze, pale and piercing, landed on him as if he were just another piece of cheap produce. "Hey!" the CEO called, snapping his fingers as though summoning a servant. "You. Yes, you with the apron. This register line is too slow. Move faster." The humiliation burned Jamal's skin. Customers stared. His mother shifted uncomfortably, his father's lips pressed into a tight line, and Brianna looked up from her phone, eyes wide. For a moment, Jamal wanted to disappear, vanish into the linoleum floor. But something inside him refused to break this time. He forced himself to look directly at the man towering over him. "I'm moving as fast as I can, sir," Jamal said evenly. Whitmore smirked, as though the very act of Jamal speaking back was amusing. "Fast as you can? No wonder this neighborhood is going nowhere. No standards, no ambition. People like you are exactly why I have to fix this place." The words landed like daggers, sharp with racism, heavy with contempt. Jamal's father bristled but said nothing. Pride kept him rooted in silence, even when his son was being humiliated. His mother avoided Whitmore's eyes, the way she had avoided confrontation her whole life, her love expressed in quiet endurance. Only Brianna muttered under her breath, "What an asshole," earning a quick glare from her father. Jamal kept his composure, though inside he wanted to scream. If he had shouted the truth, if he had said, "You don't know me, I'm not lazy, and yes, I'm gay, and I love who I love no matter what you think," maybe it would have ended there. But secrets are stubborn. They linger in the throat, waiting for the moment they can no longer be swallowed. That night at dinner, the family sat in tense silence. The kitchen smelled of fried chicken and collard greens, comfort food meant to soothe wounds that refused to close. Jamal's father finally broke the silence. "You let that man talk down to you," he said, voice low but heavy. "A real man doesn't let himself get stepped on." Jamal's fork clattered against his plate. "What was I supposed to do, Dad? Start a fight in front of customers? Lose my job? You think that would have solved anything?" His father's eyes narrowed. "Better to stand up and get fired than to let him strip you of dignity." "Dignity?" Jamal's voice cracked. "Do you even know how much dignity I've had to swallow just to survive in this city? Every damn day I deal with stares, whispers, comments. And he stopped himself. He had been about to say too much. He had been about to tell his father about the other truth he carried. The truth that would not only shame him in his father's eyes but possibly break the family apart. His mother spoke softly, a bomb in the fire. Enough, both of you. We don't need to fight tonight. But the storm was only beginning. The next week, news spread that Whitmore would hold a public meeting at City Hall to defend his redevelopment plan. Flyers plastered on telephone poles announced promises of economic growth and modern opportunities. For the residents, it meant eviction notices, skyrocketing rents, and broken routes. Jamal didn't plan to go, but his sister begged. "Please, Jamal," Brianna insisted. "You can't just let him talk about us like we're trash. You work every day, you see what people here really live like. You could say something." Jamal shook his head. "And who's gonna listen to a cashier? He's got millions. He owns the room before he even walks in." "But you have the truth," Brianna pressed. "And maybe you need to say it out loud. All of it." Her words lingered in his chest. All of it. Did she know? Had she guessed the secret he had hidden so carefully? Sometimes, in the way she looked at him, Jamal thought she did. The night of the meeting, the hall was packed. Families in worn coats, children clutching snacks, elders leaning on canes, all gathered to face the man who held their future in his hands. Whitmore stood at the podium, confident, his expensive watch glinting under the fluorescent lights. "This neighborhood has potential," he said, his voice smooth, rehearsed. "But it is being wasted. My company will bring new jobs, new businesses, and a safer environment. You should thank me for this opportunity." Boos erupted from the crowd. People shouted about homes, about community, about memories that no money could buy back. Jamal sat near the back, heart pounding, torn between silence and the urge to stand. Then Whitmore's eyes scanned the crowd and landed on him again, as though fate insisted on collision. "Young man," the CEO said, pointing directly at Jamal. "Didn't I see you at that grocery store? Tell everyone here, do you enjoy working there? Or would you rather see real opportunities?" The crowd turned. Jamal's face burned. His father's voice echoed in his head, "Better to stand up than to be stepped on." Brianna's plea whispered alongside Itzy, "All of it." Jamal rose slowly, his legs trembling. Every eye was on him. His mouth felt dry, but the words came anyway. "I work hard," he said, voice unsteady but growing stronger. "Harder than you'll ever know. And you think you can look at me and decide my worth. You think because I'm black, because I wear this uniform, I'm nothing. But I am something. I'm someone. And I'm not ashamed of who I am or who I love." Gasps rippled through the room. His mother's hands flew to her mouth. His father's jaw tightened. Whitmore raised an eyebrow, amused but uneasy. Jamal took a breath, his chest finally free. "I'm gay. And I refuse to let men like you tell me my love is worthless, or that my family doesn't deserve a home. You call us lazy, unworthy, disposable. But we are not disposable. We are not broken. We belong here." The hall erupted cheers, claps, shouts of support. For the first time, Jamal felt the weight lift, replaced by a surge of power he had never known. He was trembling, but it was not from fear. It was from release. Whitmore's smile faltered. For once, his money could not buy control of the room. And in the silence that followed, Jamal looked back at his family. His mother's eyes were wet with tears. His sister beamed with pride. His father's face was a battlefield, pride warring with prejudice, love warring with fear. The world had changed in those few minutes. Nothing would ever be the same. The silence that hung after Jamal's declaration was a silence thick with shock, confusion, and the electric crackle of possibility. It wasn't the silence of shame anymore. It was the kind that meant something irreversible had been spoken, something that could not be stuffed back into the shadows. Jamal's knees wobbled, but he refused to sit. He had spent years crouching under the weight of secrets, and now that they were out in the open, standing tall felt like the only option left. "Sit down," a man from the front row barked, his tone sharp and dismissive. His suit wasn't as fine as Whitmore's, but his sneer carried the same poison. This is about business, not your personal life. Nobody cares who you sleep with. But someone from the back shouted, "We care. He's speaking truth." A wave of murmurs followed, some voices supportive, others hostile. Jamal could feel the crowd splitting in real time, the room fracturing into those who were emboldened and those who were disgusted. Whitmore cleared his throat into the microphone, forcing his calm back into the room like a whip cracking. This meeting is about progress. Let's not be distracted by emotional outbursts. I admire your courage, young man, but feelings don't change the facts. This neighborhood is decaying. And people like you, he paused, letting his eyes linger on Jamal, his tone dripping with disdain, are part of the reason why. Jamal's stomach clenched. He knew exactly what people like you meant. Black, gay, working class. The categories Whitmore despised most, neatly packed into one fragile body. But before Jamal could speak again, another voice cut through the hall. It was Brianna. She had slipped to the front row without anyone noticing, her small frame dwarfed by the angry adults around her. She grabbed the microphone from the stand beside Whitmore and blurted, "You don't get to talk about my brother like that." Her voice cracked but carried like a shot. "You don't get to decide who belongs and who doesn't. This is our home. We've lived here our whole lives. He works harder than you'll ever work a day in your life." The room buzzed. People were on their feet now, some clapping, others booing. Security guards tensed. Jamal rushed forward to grab his sister's arm, but it was too late. The words had already spread like fire. Whitmore's jaw tightened, but his carefully polished smile never slipped. He leaned slightly toward Brianna, speaking into the microphone she still clutched. "Young lady, I admire your spirit, but this is the real world. Sentiment doesn't build cities. Discipline does. And unfortunately, discipline is what this community lacks." A hush fell again, but it wasn't the hush of agreement. It was the hush of fury simmering. An older woman from the third row stood up, her cane trembling in her grip. "Discipline?" she spat. "You want to talk about discipline? My husband and I raised 3 children in this neighborhood on 2 factory salaries. We scrubbed floors, worked double shifts, never missed rent. Don't you dare tell us we lack discipline." Cheers erupted again, this time louder. Jamal felt tears prickle at his eyes. For so long, silence had been their prison. Now voices rose, layered with years of swallowed pain, echoing through the sterile city hall. But then his father stood, and the air froze. "Enough," Marcus Johnson said, his deep baritone silencing even the most passionate cries. He walked slowly to where Jamal stood, the weight of generations pressing on his broad shoulders. His face was carved from stone, his eyes unreadable. When he reached Jamal, he didn't touch him. He simply turned to the crowd and said, "This is my son." The words carried power, but not the kind Jamal had hoped for. They sounded like a warning, not a celebration. His father's next words confirmed it. "He is my blood. I raised him to be strong, to be proud." But what he said tonight, Marcus hesitated, swallowing hard. "That is not the son I thought I raised." The gasp that followed was not from the crowd, but from Jamal's own chest. His mother's hand flew to Marcus's arm, but he shook her off. Jamal stared at his father, unable to breathe. "You mean me being gay?" Jamal said quietly, his voice trembling. Marcus's jaw clenched. "I mean you standing here in front of strangers, exposing yourself, shaming us." The pain cut deeper than any of Whitmore's insults ever could. Jamal wanted to collapse, to sink into the floor. But then Brianna squeezed his hand, her eyes blazing. "No," she said fiercely. "He's not the shame. You are for not standing with him." The room erupted again, but Jamal barely heard it. His father's face blurred as tears finally broke loose, hot and unstoppable. The boy who had spent his whole life craving his father's approval realized in that instant that he might never receive it. And yet, despite the heartbreak, Jamal felt strangely free. The worst had happened, his father had rejected him, and still he was standing. He was breathing, and the crowd around him was no longer silent. That night, the family's kitchen table became a battlefield. The fried chicken had gone cold, untouched. Marcus sat at one end, fists clenched, glaring at Jamal as if the very sight of him were an insult. "You embarrassed us," Marcus thundered. "You embarrassed this family in front of the entire neighborhood." Jamal's voice was hoarse from shouting at the meeting, but he forced himself to speak. "I told the truth. That's not embarrassing. That's surviving." "Surviving?" Marcus scoffed. "You think shouting about being gay is surviving? You think painting a target on your back is brave? The world is not kind to people like you. Do you want to be hated? Do you want to be destroyed?" "I already am hated," Jamal cried, slamming his hand on the table. "Every day, Dad. For being black, for being poor, for being me. I can't hide anymore. I won't." The room shook with his words. His mother, Evelyn, finally broke down, tears streaming as she begged, "Please, stop this. Please, we're a family." But Marcus shook his head. A family protects its name, its legacy, and right now ours is in the dirt. Brianna stood, her chair screeching against the floor. "No, Dad, you're wrong. A family protects each other. And if you can't do that, then maybe you don't understand family at all." The silence that followed was colder than winter. Marcus left the table without another word, his heavy footsteps echoing like gunshots down the hall. For days after, the house was a war zone of silence. Marcus barely looked at Jamal, speaking only to Evelyn in curt sentences. Jamal buried himself in work, taking extra shifts to avoid the suffocating tension. Brianna became his shadow, refusing to let him drown in despair, even when whispers spread through the neighborhood about his speech. Some called him brave, others called him disgusting. Both labels stung in different ways. And then came the letter. It was taped to the door of the grocery store where Jamal worked, written in bold black marker on lined notebook paper. "Faggots don't belong here. Go back where you came from." Jamal froze when he saw it. His hands shook as he tore it down, his chest heaving. He wanted to vomit. He wanted to scream. But when he looked around, he realized no one else seemed shocked. His co-workers avoided his eyes. A few customers snickered. It was as if the letter had simply confirmed what they already thought. That night, Jamal sat on the steps outside his house, staring at the crumpled paper in his hands. Brianna joined him, sitting close. She didn't say anything at first. Then she whispered, "You're not going back anywhere. This is our home. Yours as much as anyone's." Jamal's throat tightened. "But what if Dad's right? What if I made everything worse?" Brianna leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then worse is still better than silence. At least now people see you, the real you, and maybe some of them needed to." Her faith wrapped around him like armor. For the first time in days, Jamal allowed himself to imagine a future beyond fear. Meanwhile, Whitmore wasn't done. The following week, he appeared on the evening news, painting himself as a visionary misunderstood by the very people he sought to save. "I admire the passion of the residents," he said smoothly, "but change is always difficult. My project will bring prosperity to everyone, even those too blinded by emotion to see it now." When the camera cut away, the anchor mentioned Jamal by name, quoting his speech as an example of the community's resistance. Overnight, Jamal's face spread across social media. Supporters from outside the neighborhood praised his bravery, while trolls flooded his inbox with slurs and threats. The war had moved beyond the kitchen table. It was everywhere now. Jamal wanted to retreat, to curl into himself and disappear. But each time he tried, Brianna shoved him forward. "You started something," she reminded him. "You don't get to quit now." And maybe she was right, because beneath the fear, beneath the hurt, there was a small flicker of pride. For once in his life, Jamal wasn't invisible. For once, he had spoken, and the world had listened. But pride comes with a price, and the bill was still coming. The days that followed felt like living on a tightrope stretched over fire. Jamal could not walk down the street without feeling eyes on him. Some of those eyes shone with respect, nods of recognition from neighbors who had never spoken to him before. Others burned with contempt, muttered slurs and spit hitting the sidewalk near his shoes. The world had split, and Jamal was standing at the jagged fault line. At home, the divide was sharper. Evelyn tried to hold the family together with the glue of routine dinners, chores, Sunday mornings at church, but the cracks were too deep. Marcus spoke little, his silence heavy with disapproval. When he did speak, it was only to Brianna or Evelyn, never Jamal. The absence of his voice cut deeper than any insult. Jamal's father had always been his model of strength. A man who rose at dawn to work grueling shifts. A man who endured humiliation in silence. But now Jamal realized his father's strength had been built on denial. One night, unable to bear the silence any longer, Jamal knocked on his father's door. Marcus was sitting on the edge of the bed, polishing his old work boots as if the scuffed leather held answers. He didn't look up. "Dad," Jamal began, his voice tentative. "Can we talk?" Marcus's hand stilled for a moment, then resumed its rhythm. "There's nothing to talk about." "Yes, there is," Jamal pressed, stepping closer. "You can't just keep pretending I'm not here. I need you to what?" Marcus snapped, finally meeting his eyes. "To accept it? To clap for you? To tell the whole damn world I'm proud my son announced he's a thing I don't even have words for." Jamal flinched. "A gay man, Dad. Say it. I'm a gay man. That doesn't erase everything else I am." Marcus's jaw tightened. His voice dropped to a low growl. "It erases the son I thought I had." The words landed like bricks on Jamal's chest. For a moment he couldn't breathe. His vision blurred, but he forced himself not to cry. He wouldn't give his father the satisfaction of seeing him break. "Then maybe," Jamal whispered, his voice shaking but firm, "you never really saw me at all." He left the room before Marcus could reply, slamming the door behind him. Down the hall, Brianna was waiting. She wrapped her arms around him before he could collapse. "You don't need his approval," she murmured fiercely. "You've got mine. You've got Mom's. And someday maybe even his. But if not, then screw him." Her words steadied him, but the wound remained open. Meanwhile, outside their home, the neighborhood was reaching a boiling point. Whitmore's project loomed closer, eviction notices trickling into mailboxes like poison. Protest groups formed, some peaceful, others simmering with rage. Jamal was pulled into the center of it whether he wanted to be or not. His speech at City Hall had made him a symbol. Reporters sought him out. Activists quoted him. Strangers stopped him on the street. One evening, he was invited to speak at a community rally in front of the old church that stood at the heart of the neighborhood. The thought of standing in front of a microphone again terrified him, but something inside told him he had no choice. He could not let his silence undo what his words had begun. When he arrived, the church steps were crowded with neighbors holding handmade signs. "Our homes, our voices. We belong here. Love is resistance." Jamal's stomach churned as he was handed the microphone. He could feel Marcus's absence like a shadow, but Evelyn and Brianna stood at the front, their faces lit with quiet determination. He took a deep breath. "I never wanted to be a symbol," he began, his voice trembling but clear. "I'm just a cashier. I clock in, I clock out, I try to make enough to keep the lights on. But last week, I realized something. They want us to believe our voices don't matter. They want us to believe that money and power are louder than truth. But they're not." The crowd murmured in agreement, some clapping softly. Jamal pressed on. "They say this neighborhood is broken. But broken things don't fight this hard to survive. Broken things don't raise families or build communities or love each other fiercely in the face of hate. We are not broken. We are whole. And I will not let anyone millionaire or not tell me my love, my family, my community are worthless." Applause thundered, rolling across the steps like a wave. Jamal's chest swelled with something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. For the first time, he wasn't just surviving. He was living. But even hope is fragile. As the rally ended and people dispersed, a group of men lingered near the edge of the crowd. Their faces were hidden under baseball caps, their voices low and sharp. Jamal tried to ignore them, but as he walked home, they followed. "Hey, faggot," one of them called. Jamal's blood ran cold. He quickened his pace, but footsteps closed in behind him. "You think you're a hero now?" another sneered. "Think you can stand up to Whitmore, to us? You're nothing. You're a joke." Jamal's hands trembled. He wanted to run, but his legs felt rooted to the ground. One of the men shoved him hard, sending him stumbling into a brick wall. Pain shot through his shoulder. "You don't belong here," the man hissed. "You never did." Before they could strike again, a voice rang out. "Leave him alone." It was Brianna, standing at the corner with her phone raised. "I'm recording everything. Touch him again and the whole world will see your faces." The men cursed, spat on the ground, and scattered into the night. Jamal slid down the wall, his body shaking. Brianna rushed to his side, wrapping her arms around him. "You're safe," she whispered. "I've got you." Tears finally spilled down Jamal's cheeks. "I don't feel safe," he admitted, his voice raw. "I know," she said softly. "But you're not alone." The attack left scars deeper than the bruise on his shoulder. For days, Jamal jumped at shadows, his sleep haunted by footsteps chasing him. Evelyn fussed over him, making tea, pressing warm cloths to his shoulder, but nothing could soothe the gnawing fear. Marcus remained silent, his expression unreadable whenever Jamal entered the room. Then, one evening, Jamal overheard his father on the phone. The door to the living room was cracked, and Marcus's voice carried through. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore, I understand. He's young, reckless. He doesn't speak for all of us." A pause. "Yes, sir. I'll handle it." Jamal's chest clenched. His own father was speaking to Whitmore, defending him, promising to handle his own son. The betrayal cut so deep it stole his breath. He confronted Marcus that night, his hands shaking. "You called him? You called Whitmore?" Marcus didn't deny it. "I did, because you're making things worse for everyone. You think you're helping, but all you're doing is painting a bigger target on this family." Jamal's voice broke. "I'm fighting for us, Dad, for our home, for our right to exist." "No," Marcus barked. "You're fighting for yourself, for your pride, for your lifestyle. You've dragged us into a war we can't win." The words shattered something inside Jamal. For years, he had believed his father's silence was strength, that his endurance was protection. But now he saw it clearly. It was fear. Fear dressed as pride. Fear that had chained his father for decades, and now threatened to chain him too. Jamal's eyes burned with fury. "If you won't fight for me, then I'll fight without you." He left the house that night, the door slamming behind him like a gunshot. He walked for hours, through streets that smelled of rain and gasoline, until he found himself outside the grocery store. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale glow on the cracked pavement. He sat on the curb, head in his hands, the weight of the world pressing down. Then, unexpectedly, a figure sat beside him. It was Malik, a coworker from the store. Tall, broad-shouldered, with kind eyes that always lingered a moment too long on Jamal's face. Jamal had noticed, of course, but had never dared to hope. "You okay?" Malik asked softly. Jamal laughed bitterly. "Do I look okay?" Malik shook his head. "No, but you look strong. Stronger than anyone I know." Jamal glanced at him, startled. Malik's gaze was steady, unwavering. In that moment, something passed between them, recognition, understanding, something deeper than words. For the first time, Jamal allowed himself to lean into it, to lean into someone. He let out a shaky breath. "I don't feel strong," he admitted. Malik's hand brushed his, tentative but warm. "That's because strength isn't about feeling. It's about surviving anyway." Jamal's heart pounded. For years, he had hidden this part of himself, suffocated it under fear. But here, in the quiet hum of a parking lot, he felt it stir, alive and real. He turned his hand, interlacing their fingers. And for the first time, Jamal didn't feel alone. The air inside the Johnson household was heavy with silence. For days, every word felt like glass on the floor, sharp, fragile, and impossible to ignore. Marcus and Anthony barely spoke beyond what was necessary, and Olivia buried herself in books, pretending not to notice the fractures in the air around her. Yet cracks, no matter how deep, have a way of letting the light seep through. It was Anthony who broke first. One night after dinner, when Marcus retreated into his office, Anthony followed him. "We can't keep living like this," he said softly, standing in the doorway. Marcus didn't look up, his fingers tapping restlessly against the mahogany desk. "You humiliated me in front of the entire city?" Marcus muttered, his voice low and bruised. Anthony's throat tightened. "I told the truth. The truth shouldn't humiliate anyone. Unless—" He let the words hang. Marcus finally looked up, his eyes blazing but also glassy, uncertain. For the first time, Anthony saw not just the CEO's self-assured, commanding figure but the man behind it. A man terrified of losing control, of admitting vulnerability. Anthony stepped closer. "You built an empire, Marcus. But what is it worth if you can't face yourself?" Marcus pushed back his chair, rising, his tall frame towering over Anthony. His voice trembled with suppressed rage. "You don't understand what it means to claw your way up when the world is waiting for you to fail. You don't know what it's like to be the only black man in a boardroom full of white faces, every one of them waiting for your first mistake. I couldn't afford weakness. I still can't." Anthony swallowed hard, his heart pounding. "Loving me isn't weakness. Loving anyone isn't weakness. Hiding it hat's what's destroying you, and it's tearing apart everyone you love." Marcus's face twisted, but his fists slowly unclenched. He sat back down heavily, burying his face in his hands. For the first time in decades, Marcus allowed himself to weep, not the quiet, restrained tears of shame but full, unguarded sobs. Anthony didn't move at first, stunned, but then he walked over and wrapped his arms around him. For the first time, Marcus didn't resist. Meanwhile, Olivia was fighting her own battle. At school, whispers followed her everywhere. Some classmates sneered, "Your dad's the gay one, right? Must run in the family." Others treated her with quiet pity. One day, after hearing a boy mutter a slur, Olivia snapped. She stood up in the cafeteria, her voice louder than she ever thought possible. "You don't get to talk about my family like that. You don't get to decide who they are." The room fell silent. It was messy, it was imperfect, but in that moment, she felt powerful. That evening, Olivia told her fathers what had happened. Marcus stared at her in shock, then pride flickered in his eyes. "You stood up," he said quietly. Olivia grinned, tears shimmering. "I learned from the best, even if it took you a while." The real turning point came weeks later. The company was in freefall, investors pulling out, contracts collapsing. Marcus faced the press once more, this time without notes, without the polished facade. Cameras flashed as he stepped onto the stage. "I built this company with the belief that strength comes from control," he began, his voice steady but raw. "But control without honesty is nothing but fear wearing a suit. I am a black man. I am gay. I love someone, and I refuse to apologize for that anymore. If that costs me everything, then so be it. But I will no longer lead a company or a family built on lies." Gasps filled the room. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, slowly, applause began, hesitant, scattered, but growing until it filled the hall. Not everyone clapped. Some left, but Marcus stood taller than he ever had before. The fallout was brutal. He lost investors. Friends he thought were loyal vanished overnight. But something remarkable happened. 2 new allies emerged. A coalition of LGBTQ+ leaders, activists, and younger entrepreneurs rallied around him. For every door that slammed shut, another cracked open. His company, though wounded, didn't collapse, transformed. At home, something even more important was healing. Marcus no longer avoided mirrors. He no longer snapped at Anthony for smiling too wide in public. He took Olivia to her first Pride March, where the three of them walked hand in hand down streets filled with rainbow flags and music. For the first time, Marcus let himself laugh in public without restraint. That night, as fireworks lit up the sky, Anthony whispered, "Do you regret it? Coming out?" Marcus shook his head. "I regret waiting this long." But life, as always, wasn't a perfect fairy tale. Hate mail still arrived. Protesters still showed up outside company buildings. Olivia still had days when the weight of her family's visibility made her want to hide. But now they faced it together. One evening, Marcus sat alone on the porch, staring at the fading sunset. Olivia joined him, curling into his side. "Do you think it'll ever get easier?" she asked. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Maybe not, but it will always be worth it." Anthony came out with a tray of tea, settling beside them. "We're not done fighting," he said softly. Marcus nodded. "No, but at least now we're fighting as ourselves." The three of them sat in silence, watching the stars blink into existence. The world outside was still uncertain, still harsh, still unforgiving. But inside that circle, father, partner, daughter, there was hope. And sometimes hope was enough. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.